Hi guys, welcome to Money by Sunny. Having a budget is a key building block in managing your personal finances. In fact, it's probably the single most important item you can put into place to have a better handle on your spending and ensure that you're working towards your mid or long-term financial goals. Everything starts from planning your expenditure and savings, and budgets are invaluable in both planning as well as monitoring your actual outlays. Not all budgets are made equal, however, and today we'll be talking about the different types of personal budgets out there, as well as their individual pros and cons. While there's no one single budget type that can be labeled as the best budget, the different varieties are good in their own ways and may be useful depending on where you are in your own personal financial journey. But first, let's quickly go through some of the budgeting basics. All of these budgets require some key information about your personal finances, namely: Number 1. Your monthly take-home pay. This refers to the amount that hits your account every month, which means after deducting statutory items like income tax. This is your base revenue that your budget will be based around. Number 2. Your monthly expenses. This is a listing of all the items that you spend money on each month. And it will consist of a combination of fixed expenses, such as rent, loan repayments, etc., as well as variable expenses, such as utilities, groceries, and other items that tend to fluctuate to some extent from month to month. Without further ado, let's get into the different types of personal budgets. And hopefully, you'll be able to get a sense of which ones might work for you. Number 1. The 50-30-20. This method splits your take-home pay into three main categories, namely needs or must-haves, 50%, wants or nice-to-haves, 30%, and savings, 20%. Your needs will typically consist of your fixed expense items, such as debt repayments and rent, and a couple of your variable expense items, such as utilities and groceries. The trick is to take a good look at your expenses and figure out what items are really considered as needs. For example, groceries would normally be considered as needs, but luxury items such as steak or gourmet cheeses may or may not be. Since the categories are fairly broad, this can be thought of as a more flexible budget, since there is leeway for you to decide exactly how and where to spend within each category. For example, the 30% allocated to wants might consist of items such as eating out, going to the movies, cable or Netflix subscriptions, and so on. But there is no specific cap or ceiling on the budgeted expense for each of these individual items. One of the key advantages of this method is the fact that savings is one of the specific categories and has that 20% proportion. This is a very healthy proportion and will ensure that your savings will be built up over time. The flexibility of the 50-30-20 that we spoke about earlier can also be thought of as an advantage, though the flip side is that more flexibility can sometimes result in too much discretionary or impulse spending. On the whole though, this is a great option to consider if you're new to personal budgeting, as it provides a more gentle learning curve. Number 2. Cash envelopes. The cash envelope system is entirely cash-based, which is one of its most powerful features. After all, you can't spend what you don't have, and this method takes full advantage of that. There have also been studies showing that people tend to spend more when using credit cards as compared to cash. This is partly due to the fact that with card spending, you can't actually see the money leaving your account, and it thus becomes easier to spend. This is where using cold hard cash comes in. This method involves withdrawing your take-home pay in cash each month, then splitting this cash and stuffing it into envelopes. Each envelope represents an expense category, and there should be a predefined amount of cash that is put into each one. These categories should be things like groceries, eating out, utilities, gas or petrol, etc. For example, You may end up putting in $300 for your groceries envelope, which is how much you have available for the month for groceries. Once you have these cash envelopes, all of your spending for the month has to come from them. No swiping your credit cards and no additional withdrawals from your accounts. The major benefit of this method is that it's visual and tangible, and it sets a limit on each of your expense categories. Once you see the money leaving each envelope as it is spent and how much is remaining, you'll be able to get a very clear picture of where your money is going. This will also help in reining in impulse purchases. This can be very beneficial, especially for those of us who may have had issues with overspending on credit cards or who are new to budgeting. The downside is that you will end up carrying a fair amount of cash around, which may not always be safe. This also means that you will not be making purchases online, which may mean missing out on certain online-only discounts, or the convenience of getting items delivered to you. Furthermore, there are times when paying with cash may not be practical. For example, paying your loan installments or utilities. One way to partially get around this is to subtract your fixed expenses from your take-home pay and only withdraw that figure in cash instead. You still get the benefit of ensuring that each variable expense category has a fixed amount of cash allocated to it, while still settling all your fixed expenses. Number 3. Pay yourself first. This is a kind of reverse budget where you first figure out how much you're going to be saving or paying yourself each month. Once that has been determined, you subtract it from your take-home pay, and that's the amount that you have left for your expenses. This method treats savings as a must-have item, almost like another expense. This ensures that your savings are the highest priority item each month. This can be especially useful when you're saving up for a specific item, such as an emergency fund. One good way to ensure that this takes place is to set up an automatic transfer to your designated savings account on a monthly basis. This should preferably be right after your regular payday. That way, you don't have to consciously do it every month. Another benefit of this type of budget is its flexibility. It's less detailed and prescriptive than some of the other types out there, while still ensuring that your savings are prioritized. Once your savings have been set aside, the rest of your disposable income can be spent, without worrying about whether you'll have enough savings left over. However, this can also be thought of as a downside of this type of budget, as not every expense item is accounted for. If you're the type who tends to make luxury or impulse purchases, you may find yourself with insufficient money to spend on essentials such as food or groceries. Number 4. Zero-based budget. Zero-based budgets are also known as zero-sum budgets. In essence, they work by allocating every dollar of your take-home pay to specific categories. This is so that you're left with zero useless or miscellaneous dollars at the end of the month. This way, there's less opportunity and temptation for misspending. Think of it as every dollar has a purpose. It's a very specific, meticulous budget that works out beforehand how each and every dollar of your income will be used. You can then compare your actual spending versus your budget for each of these categories to see if you were able to stick to your budget. And if you weren't, you'll be in a good position to be able to figure out how to correct your spending in the subsequent months. Ending up with zero. Does this mean that you spend everything that you earn and don't save anything? Quite the opposite. Savings is considered one of the categories, and one of the very important ones too, that some of your income will be allocated to, so that it doesn't get left out. Due to its detailed nature, the zero-based budget is useful to get a good handle on exactly where your money is going, and gives you great visibility on both your planned as well as actual spending. It also helps to avoid impulse spending, since each dollar is accounted for. The flip side to this level of detail is that it can be difficult to implement, since it can be more time-consuming than some of the other budgets out there. It's also one of the stricter budgets out there, so it will depend very much on the personality of the individual. If you're comfortable with planning out your monthly spend in advance, and then adhering to it, then this could be the budget for you. But if you think you'll need more autonomy or leeway in your monthly expenses, it may be better to try one of the other budget types that we spoke about earlier. In conclusion, there are a wide range of personal budgets available for you to make use of, and they each have their advantages and disadvantages. It's normal to switch between budget types, depending on your priorities and objectives. Once you get comfortable with the various methods, you can even come up with hybrid budgets, picking the best, most suitable features to then tailor a budget that suits your needs perfectly. I hope you got some useful insights from this video. Give us a like and subscribe if you did, and see you next time on Money by Sunny.